Ah!
You've all met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Haven't you? I guess you can say we've all met with a terrible fate today. But anyway, welcome everybody to episode 3 of the Kokiri Chronicles Zelda podcast. This is a podcast where I do this every third day of the month. To where I talk about theories, lore, references, and Easter eggs, all that good jazz. But this is definitely a awesome Zelda podcast that I do. And by the way, if you guys are new to this channel, and if you guys love Zelda, and you are watching this on YouTube by the time this gets uploaded, please don't forget to do the following by liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good jazz. It really helps me out, as I just love doing this every third day of the month. And I cannot wait to do some more. But welcome in. I hope you guys are having an awesome Wednesday so far. Looking at Twitch chat, we have an anonymous giver giving Landi a tier 1 gift sub. Well, whoever did that, thank you so much for giving Landi an awesome gift sub. But by the way, anybody for Twitch chat, let me know how the music is that's playing right now. If it gets too loud or if it's too quiet, let me know how loud it is. How loud is the music? If I need to turn it down so y'all can hear me and my friends, who I will introduce later on. But you guys know why we are here today. Also, we got 100 biddies. We got 100 biddies. We got 100 biddies from Lee Landi Lodge. Landi, thank you so much for the 100 bits. I really appreciate it. But also, we got Trousers coming in. Welcome in, everybody who's watching this from Twitch. This is recording. So today, y'all, we are talking about, of course, if you guys can obviously see the theme that's going on here with my cap, that mask over there, and of course, this golden cartridge. It's called this golden limited edition cartridge of Majora's Mask. This is definitely a game that I had from my childhood. This is the first Zelda game I ever owned. So, big shout out to this game from my childhood. But anyway, also today, of course, we are talking about Majora's Mask. But we are going to be talking about the origin of Majora's Mask's moon. But, however, I was told from the Zelda series that it definitely is dangerous to go alone, and I got a couple of nerds here who are going to be helping me out. They're also here to talk about Zelda with me and all that jazz. So, if you guys can, please come out and introduce yourself and let us know who you are. But also, hello, thank y'all for joining me today.
You have all met with a terrible fate. All of you. Yes.
But welcome in. So, ladies and gentlemen, you guys, this person needs no introduction, but you guys have seen him around. You've seen him in a lot of our communities. He's also mods for me and a few other people. Coming back onto the show, we do have my mod, Sora850.
Hello, everyone. Hoping y'all are doing well.
And last but not least, also new to the podcast, he definitely is known for other awesome games for Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, but just like how we do theories and lore here about Zelda, he also happens to do theories and lore about Zelda, but mostly with games such as Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. Please welcome over from the Landi Lodge, we got Landi joining us today.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? What's going on, chat? What's going on, Sora? And what's going on to our beloved host, Kokiri. Dude, thanks so much for having me on the Kokiri Chronicles. I think we're all going to have a great time hanging out and chatting today. And it's Majora's Mask, man. You can't ask for a better game to talk about.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
And
I cannot agree anymore right there. Like that, this is one of the best games ever made. So
Yes,
definitely.
absolutely. Which, by the way, Twitch chat, real quick before we start, how is the music that is playing in the background? Is it louder than them, or can you guys hear them perfectly? Can you guys also hear the music that is playing? Please let me know. For anybody in the Twitch chat, let me know how the audio is. How is it? How is that incredible audio doing so far? Okay, Butter says it's good. Okay, thank you, Butter. Thank you.
Thank you, Butter.
But anyway, but yeah, we guys are here today because we are talking about one of the greatest games ever made. Which honestly, this is definitely is one of the darker Zelda games that Nintendo has ever made. Next to other games like Twilight Princess, of course. Which, by the way, before we dive into this, I want to know what was y'all's first experience like with Majora's Mask when you guys first got the game.
Sora, why don't you go first?
Okay, so like my first experience with Majora's Mask, I was still a young kid when I got the game. I kind of got it as a hand-me-down from one of my cousins, along with my Nintendo 64 and Ocarina of Time. I played through Ocarina of Time first, and then I got to Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask creeped me out a bit as a kid, not gonna lie. Like, just like the darker atmosphere the game had versus Ocarina of Time's like fairy tale like setting, it just creeped me out in multiple areas. And then of course, like when you get cursed as a Deku scrub, and then once that's free or whatever, or once you're free from that, you put the mask on. The freaky scene you get from when you put on a mask, like a transformation mask, especially since you can't skip it the first time, it's terrifying. Because you can literally see Link just like screaming in pain as he's transforming. So like, just as the beginning setting alone sets up the stage for how dark this game is gonna get. And as a kid, I almost had nightmares about it. Like, not gonna lie. But at the same time, that was what drew me into the game. Because like I love darker stories and darker games like that. So despite that, it really like had me hooked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like definitely dark games like Majora's Mask definitely really hook onto you, especially if you're a hardcore Zelda fan like myself. Like Majora's Mask is a really appealing game, to several audiences who both enjoy both dark titles and of course the Zelda series.
Yeah, which Majora's Mask was actually my second Zelda game, so I wasn't like a full-on fan just yet. I was kind of just starting out.
Yeah.
So
I totally feel. And Landi, how about you? How about you, good sir? What was your first experience like when you first got the game?
So, for me, the whole N64 era was filtered to me through my older brother, in the sense that my older brother was the big Zelda fan when we were growing up. Now, he's 5 years older than I am. So around the time Majora's Mask comes out, I'm maybe... I mean, what year did it come out?
2000.
Anyone know off the top of that?
yeah, 2000.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 8 years old, basically. 7, 8 years old, depending on the month. So, I was old enough to run around in Zelda. I was not play those games to completion. And, Ocarina of Time, honestly, is the game... See, that came out when I was about 5. So some of my earliest memories are of Ocarina of Time, watching my brother play it, me being able to do like the Kokiri Forest section and the Epona horse race, the little things that I was able to accomplish. But Majora's Mask was when I was finally starting to get old enough that I could figure some of this stuff out. And I remember, like you, Sora, initially being really taken aback by how unsettling and creepy and dark it was compared to Ocarina of Time. But what drew me in, you want to talk about my first real experience with the game, what drew me in was how alive Clocktown felt compared to any other town in gaming at that time. I mean, you want to flash back to the N64 era. Compare, I challenge you, compare Clocktown to any town from any game from the N64, PS1, that era of gaming, I was going to throw in Dreamcast, but that's right before PS2. I would even throw in Dreamcast, if I'm being honest with you. I challenge you to find a town that had more NPCs with daily routines on 3 separate days that they're locked in at, like dialogue that can, give you insight to the game's mythology, the surrounding town's culture. And I don't know, again, like, one of my favorite parts of Ocarina of Time was Kakariko Village for this same reason. But Clock Town to me was like, it was this living, breathing world. And before I was really old enough to, again, play that game to its completion, when I was 7 years old, I was booting that game up and just running around Clock Town looking for stuff to do. And little by little, over the years, I started to figure the game out just from being infatuated, in a sense, with Clock Town alone. So again, I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but my entire initial experience with this game is almost entirely contained within Clock Town and me just falling in love with that place. I remember just like not paying attention in elementary school and wondering what it would be like to live in Clock Town. That place with a moon crashing apocalypse within an impending 72 hours? I wanted to know what it was like to live there. So that really about sums up my experience with the game.
I mean, not gonna lie, that's kind of me. I sometimes still think about that, actually.
That's a really good story to talk about, especially for, like what you guys said, like how unsettling like the game story and tone definitely feels with how dark this game is. But I know I said this earlier in my first episode of the Kokiri Chronicles podcast. My first experience, like, this was the first game I ever owned. And for hours on end, I got stuck in Clock Town, not knowing what I was supposed to do. I'm sure we can all agree that the happy mask salesman did creep the shit out of us with that angry expression on his face.
Dude, he still creeps me out. He still creeps me out.
Yeah.
He's my boy. He's my boy. He's my boy.
That angry expression he has on his face is nightmare fuel. It is legit nightmare fuel.
Oh my god. But yeah, I remember, like, I actually got stuck and like, I honestly, in order to get further into this game, I was like around, I think it was like, I would have to say maybe 16 or 17. I had to get a guidebook and I ordered it online because I did not know where to go or what I was supposed to do. The only further I got was, like, I got Link, back to normal. I got the Ocarina of Time back. And I got so confused, like, what was I supposed to do? Because, I felt like, I was trapped forever because, I would run up to the guard and the guard was always, like, blocking my path and I never got a chance to talk to him, like, because I thought he wouldn't let me through because even though I had the Deku Scrub mask, because, when you start the game, the guards in, like, each side of Clock Town, they don't let you through, if you have that Deku Scrub mask on. But if you're like young Link or a Goron or Zora, they'll let you through. But back then, I did not know what I was doing. But when I finished the game, I was like, my god, this is one of the most darkest games I've ever played.
Yes, you lucky you had a guidebook. I had to figure everything out the old-fashioned way, and it took me forever to figure out how to get through there because Majora's Mask is so dang cryptic. Like, I love the game, but it is a cryptic experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you guys can both agree to an extent, like, out of all the Zelda games out there compared to games to like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, even the new guy in the block being Tears of the Kingdom, like, to this day in, like, throughout the Zelda series, like, people are still finding new theories and lore each and every day about Majora's Mask because like, compared out of all of the Zelda on the mainline Zelda titles there, this, like, Majora's Mask is by far, to me, and even to this day, is one of the most mysterious game in terms of, like, lore.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, this game has more lore than any other game in the series, as far as I know. It has about as much lore as a Kingdom Hearts game, all by itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think one thing that really helps is that the game is relatively ambiguous.
It is.
Like, people are still debating to this day exactly what the hell all of that just meant. And, there's a lot of things people agree on, but there's a lot of things that there's still not concrete answers for. Like, was that all a dream? Was that Link's, journey into the afterlife before becoming a shade? Was that an actual place that Link went to, an actual land, and he will return to Hyrule one day? Like, there's so much, especially with the Hero of Time, mystery surrounding particularly what the end of that game means and what it means for this particular Link and its incarnation, the Hero of Time. So I think it lends itself to being discussed forever simply because of that ambiguity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because honestly, this was one of the honestly, the tragedy about the Hero of Time is it's definitely one of the most iconic topics to talk about, because at the end of Majora's Mask, we don't know what specifically happened to them. To this day, as Landy was saying, was the land of Termina actually was a parallel universe to Ocarina of Time's Hyrule? Was it all a dream, or was Link actually was in purgatory? Honestly, there's a lot of mysteries and questions to this day that even Zelda fans and Zelda theorists to this day still scratch their heads on about.
There's no concrete answers, nor should there ever be.
Okay, I just had a thought. Are we sure that this game was not written by Tetsuya Nomura? Because this is literally up his alley.
I mean, you might never know. Maybe Mr. Onuma maybe had a conversation with Nomura. I mean, I don't think Onuma would never tell.
It's Nomura inspired.
Exactly. Okay, so jumping in, you guys know about Majora's Mask. One of the most many things in terms of mysteries about this game, of course, there's a lot of mystery involving the mask itself, the entire land of Termina, who the Happy Mask Salesman really is as a person.
How the heck did he get that mask? But I digress.
Exactly. But the one thing that we are going to be talking about is, of course, the one that hovers right above the entire land of Termina is the moon. It's just it's just a thing that just appears everywhere. No matter where you go, you can be in the southern swamp, in the snowy mountains of Snowhead, the oceans of Great Bay, or even the deserted canyons of Ikana. But no matter where you go, the moon is always there. But the thing is, I want to start with this question, what? Okay, where do you guys think this moon originally came from? Because I was looking into it as well, by actually looking into the game dialogue, and even some of the residents, and you see a lot of how Landy's saying all these residents who live in Termina and Clocktown, they're so alive, and there's only a few people in this game who who talk about it. For example, you have the twin jugglers on the east side of Clocktown, which they say, and I quote, "We're the twin jugglers from the Gorman Troupe. We're practicing for the big carnival. It happens once in a blue moon, or in this year's case, once in a really, really scary red-eyed moon." And then, of course, we also do have Professor Shikashi. That is the old man astronomer in the Astral Observatory, where he actually says about the moon, and I quote, "I've been enamored with the moon since I was a child. Now I spend my days gazing at it from here. The moon has long been considered a mystical body which people have worshipped and feared. That alone shows how the moon has a cosmic influence that affects our daily lives. But lately, there is something quite strange with the moon. Strange indeed. It seems as though the moon is being pulled down by something and is slowly drawing closer." And then lastly, of course, it's the conversation that's going on in the mayor's office, to where you have the guards are saying we should definitely get everybody out of Termina, get them to evacuate immediately, because this moon is going to start falling. And then on the other side, you have the carpenters saying that's just a bunch of bull crap. This is a bunch of phony baloney. It's not going to happen. So you know what? We're just going to go on with the carnival of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you guys feel about where do y'all think this moon came from? Out of nowhere, way before it was influenced by Majora.
So I think it's their literal moon, right? I mean, that's how they're referring to it, unless we're to believe these people are all pretty stupid, which, I want to have somewhat of a generous interpretation of this town. But at the end of the day, they're speaking about it like it's their moon. Like they were not referring to it as this new moon appeared, or there seems to be this meteor-like thing headed towards us. They're speaking of it as like, oh, that's our moon. And lately it's getting closer and closer. And look, for all we know, Termina's a strange land, right?
Yeah.
Maybe out of default, the moon really isn't that far away. And maybe it normally has a very peaceful face. But since the emergence of Majora, Skull Kid, whatever catalyzed it, it started drawing it in slowly. Because they don't seem all that alarmed on the first day, even though there are those in the town that will acknowledge it's close. So I think at the very least what we could take from these screenshots, from this conversation they're all having, is that this moon is not an anomaly. It's not some new moon that came out of nowhere. It is the moon the Termina residents are used to looking at, and it appears as though it doesn't always have this angry, like feverish expression on its face. So just at face value, no pun intended, those are the two things I can gather from this.
Yeah, absolutely, because, one thing I do want to add is that, and I'm sure you guys have also picked up on this in y'all's playthroughs, like, even if you go to the mayor's office, if you actually look above, where, right above his chair, you can actually see a face which actually represents the moon, to where, of course, it does have, a big wide smile and yellow eyes, but now that we look at this moon, that is definitely influenced by Majora, it definitely gives off a grimacy looking face, and the red eyes definitely is a big symbolism to Majora's Mask.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you, Sora?
So I actually kind of pieced together my own little theory, just with what little research I did get to do with this. So if you take into account everything that they say, especially the astronomer, one thing that you will notice is he references the moon as something that was once worshipped, right?
Yes.
So, now, taking that into account, another thing that you will also notice, no one at all, and I mean no one, questions why the moon has a face at all. Because, think about it like this. If you look at a moon, just in real life, or in any of the other Zelda games or whatever, there's no face on any moon. It's literally just the one here in Termina. That's the only moon that you ever see with a face. No one questions that. So, what I'm thinking on this is, especially taking into account what the astronomer said, part of me wonders if the moon in Termina is actually Termina's god. And the reason...
No, go ahead. You finish first.
Okay. The reason I say that is it kind of piggybacks off of what I said. No one questions that it has a face. But, again, the astronomer literally said that the moon is something that was once worshipped. But if you take those into account, on top of the fact that you see the moon symbol in the mayor's office that has a happy face there with the yellow eyes and the smile, and also, fun fact, in the 3DS version, you can see that same thing outside his door, just to his office. So that only kind of further symbolizes it. So if you take that into account, it makes a lot of sense. So with my line of thinking on that, the reason his face goes from smiling to angry and whatnot is Majora basically possessed the power to turn Termina's god against its own people.
Yeah, exactly, because when you do think about it, if you guys remember at the ending of close to the ending of Majora's Mask, after the hero time is shown playing the Ode to Order, which of course actually summons the four gods that actually protected the land. Which, by the way, I want to actually talk about this real quick, because I'm sure you guys remember that. The one thing that people actually talk about, especially Anju's grandmother, who actually sits in the Stockpot Inn at East Clocktown, she talks about the story of the Carnival of Time, which is mostly has been a bedside story for the residents of Termina and for kids. And basically what Anju's grandmother talks about is that the Carnival of Time is a celebration about the people of Termina actually giving praise and worship towards the four gods, aka the four giants, to where each of them walked, one giant walked 100 paces north, 100 east, 100 south, and 100 west. And they all and the people would wear masks during the carnival time in order to show their gratitude towards them. But not to mention, another story that was told by Anju's grandmother was about the four giants and how much of an influence that they have on being like gods and like protectors and guardians of Termina, but how they also befriended an imp, which of course happens to be the Skull Kid, who is wearing Majora's Mask, which of course it has been later revealed at the end of Majora's Mask that this is the same Skull Kid that that the Hero Time interacted in the Lost Woods, who also who is infatuated with Sariasan, because he says to Link, like after he loses the mask, saying like, you know, you have the same smell as the fairy kid who taught me that song in the forest. And then, you know, going back to like, you know, like after the Hero Time plays the Oath to Order, the four giants come in and to stop the moon from like having a collision course towards Clock Town, you know, Majora comes out and just says, you know, this puppet is pure garbage, and like literally he literally enters inside the moon and possesses it. And that is the only time we get to hear the moon talking through Majora, which he says, and I quote, "I shall consume everything."
Mm-hmm.
But do you guys feel like, you know, both the moon and the four giants also have an influence together, like chronologically with one another?
I kind of feel like they do, if I'm being honest. Because, like, if you think about it like this, the four giants are in each compass direction: north, south, east, and west.
Yep.
At the center of all of that is Clock Town, which is where the moon hovers directly above.
Yep.
So they're all in some symbolic way connected to each other. Just looking at it from that little reference right there.
Yeah. Landy, how about you?
So, oh man. Okay. So this is a little bit loaded. If I'm going to give you everything I think right now, all right, here we go. So, you know, Sora, I really liked what you brought up where you're like, hey, I think these people see the moon as their god. Let's maybe, even if they don't see it as a god, right? They at least see it as a deity, right? We can grant that. The people of Termina, at the very least, if it's not their god, they see it as something of that sort. Now, let's maybe discuss a little bit of Japanese mythology here.
Okay.
There is a moon god known as Tsukuyomi.
Ooh.
Now, Tsukuyomi is the moon god in Shinto, and whether it be his story or his background, he's heavily linked to the cycle of life and death. Now, his role basically as a moon deity pretty much embodies the cyclical nature of time, life, and the inevitable transition into death. So that's what the Shinto moon god Tsukuyomi represents. And we know that death is a huge theme in this game. But you also bring up the four giants at north, south, east, west, and that the moon is headed towards the center, which is Clock Town. So try to maybe imagine Termina as this big clock where you have the north giant at noon, you have the south giant at 6, east at 3, west at 9.
Yeah.
Now, we know Tsukuyomi, the Shinto moon god or Shinto moon deity, embodies the cyclical nature of time. Now, not only is death a huge theme in this game, but there's also time. So you're telling me that there's this Japanese moon god that represents this cycle of life and death, as well as the cyclical nature of time, and that you have those two themes pretty much as the cornerstones of what Majora's Mask is. Now, again, what do you see? And honestly, for those of you out there playing Rebirth, you might see a similar thematic overlap here. But what you see in the town of Clocktown is some people are accepting this inevitable death, And there are those who deny it. And you can deny it in different ways. You have the construction workers who want to do the festival and act like the whole thing isn't even happening. Or you have those who wish to deny their death by trying to escape. But I'm trying to remember, maybe you guys can help me. Who is the NPC who at like the end of the third night, you can find them in Clock Tower, and they almost have something peaceful about them, where they're like, hey, yeah, you know what? I've accepted this and I'm just going to ride it out. I'm going to stay here. This was my home and I'm going to ride it out. I don't know. Does that ring a bell to either of you guys?
I mean, honestly, I can definitely think of like a couple of residents who are.
There's a number of them who choose to do this, but ultimately, what you have is an acceptance of death and the denial of death. And when you think about all the temples you go to, all the characters, right, whether it be the Deku Scrubs, the Gorons, the Zoras, all of those areas are centered around a character trying to cope with death, right? You have the Deku Shrub Chief.
The Deku-san's butler. Yep.
The Deku-san's butler. But even before that, you have the chief who's worried that his daughter has died, right?
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, sorry, it was the Deku butler's son. Sorry, I misworded that.
Well, I know that. I'm saying on top of that, because the Deku's butler's son, you don't really see that till like the end credits.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is the Dekus themselves, like the Deku chief, was enraged at the loss of his daughter, who is still alive. You go and get her. But it's almost like that fear of death was turning him into a tyrant. That fear of the potential loss of his daughter turned him into a tyrant and had him pin it on the monkeys when they had nothing to do with it. So I guess ultimately what I'm getting at is across the board in the game, you see characters who there is some denial of death. Whether they're in denial. And part of Link's story in the Song of Healing is to heal those wounds, whether it's the Zora mother who lost their children or the Goron baby that lost its father, or as you brought up, the Deku butler who lost their son. You have this overlapping theme, and this is what the moon represents. The moon represents this inevitability of death. And we know that might be something symbolically, thematically that Link is dealing with. But ultimately, all of Termina, which translates to end, by the way, to like terminate, is grappling with the same thing. It's almost like there's this realm-wide pattern of impending death. And what do you do with that? How do you respond to it? Do you deny it? Do you stand forthrightly in the face of it with courage like Link does? Or do you try to escape it? You see all these different responses to it, and it's all catalyzed by the moon. So again, just to bring us back to Tsukuyomi, the Shinto moon god, linked to the cycle of life and death and time itself, you see how it all comes from there. You have to see almost like Ocarina of Time as the Sun game, a game about life and coming of age, and Termina as this game of death, this game of almost like the underworld. Or an other world, rather. But I went on quite a tangent there, so I'll leave it there.
That's a lot to think about. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but a lot of people have definitely used a form of symbolism about each part of the area that you visit, especially in Clocktown, to where people actually, to where the entire game actually represents the 5 stages of grief, which of course is...
Dabda.
Dabda, which is denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and then finally acceptance.
Yep.
But it definitely is a lot right there, though. But
that's the key right there. Like you said, that cycle of grievance. It starts with denial and it ends with acceptance, which you see that happening all over Termina.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have like denial, saying like, with the King Deku saying like, like having to like pin the blame on the monkeys for his daughter, the Deku princess being that's anger. My bad. Of course, and of course we did have the Goron warrior, Darmani, to where he actually was praised among his people, way before that he died when he was going to go check out what was going on in Snowhead. And then you have Lulu, who, after, being depressed and losing her voice, after the loss of her eggs that were taken by the Gerudo pirates. And then, of course, a lot of people say that that stone tower is a representation of acceptance of going into the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I do want to talk about as well is, and this definitely brings a lot of mystery though, is when we actually get to the moon. So when we get to the moon, we see like this big green, grassy, meadowish paradise kind of place. Like we see like a blue sky, a lot of grassy terrain, and just one single tree. But one thing that definitely brings a lot of questions to the table, in regards to the moon, is of course the moon children that we find over there, and there are 5 moon children in total. We have four kids who actually wear the mask of the bosses that the Hero of Time actually faced in order to free the 4 giants. And then you have the other kid who wears Majora's mask. And what do you do? Like, whenever you talk about them, each of the 4 kids say one of the same line, which of course is saying, in order to play their game of hide and seek, they say, "Oh, I see that you have mask. You too, can you be a happy mask salesman?" And then, like, when the Hero Time starts giving them mask and actually interacts with these moon children, each of the 4 kids actually actually ask a lot of dark questions that we actually don't expect a kid to say, which I actually went ahead and wrote down, and I definitely will read them word for word, to where the kid with the Odowa mask says, and I quote, "Your friends, what kind of people are they? I wonder, do these people think of you as a friend?" And then you have the kid wearing the goat mask. "You, what makes you happy? I wonder, what makes you happy? Does it make others happy?" And then you have the kid with the Georg mask who says, "The right thing. What is it? I wonder, if you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy?" And then finally you have the kid with the twin mold mask who says, "Your true face. What kind of face is it? The face under the mask. Is that your true face?" And honestly, when you do think about it, you guys can see like how like underneath the mask, like, they definitely have a lot of symbolism to the happy mask salesman, which of course, the happy mask salesman, which we said earlier, brings a lot of mysteries and questions as to who he really is, and how, at the start, he was able to, like, he definitely was aware of like the power of Majora's mask and how it definitely is going to influence a lot of people, as he says, if this mask does not get retrieved, terrible things will happen. And then, but at the start, he even himself, like he says, he says like he's gone through great lengths to get the mask, even though to this day, it's still an unanswered question as to how he even got it. But he is definitely aware of the evil that is within the mask, even though the happy mask salesman himself did not put on the mask himself. But he did find a way to acquire it. And when Majora's Mask 3DS came out, there was one of the people who worked on the game worked on a fun Miiverse project to where you can actually ask the mask salesman. And one of the questions was asked by a fan was about the moon children looking like the happy mask salesman, which of course the happy mask salesman responds to this in this funny thing, and I quote, "I'm not too sure, but judging by the fact that they live on the moon, surely they cannot be normal children? I have not met them in person, but I am pretty certain they must be some figment created by Majora's mask. Perhaps they look like children because Link is himself but a child?" So I want to know, like, what kind of influence do you guys think, like, have, like, like the way, like, how the moon really works with this grassy paradise, and why are these kids here? like what caused them to be here? Like, are they actually a part of influence of Majora's Mask? But part of me was thinking like the way like how each of the kids express themselves is the way like how the Skull Kid actually feels, because in in the story told by Andrew's grandmother, the story was said, like the Skull Kid felt alone and scared, like after the four giants left him, and they fought like the giants actually left the Skull Kid, and he felt betrayed and hurt and all alone, and I feel like that each of the four masks that the kids wear definitely represent four things in regards to the Skull Kid, which I know the goat mask actually represents honesty. What was the other one that I said, Sora? You remember?
I know Twin Mole was forgiveness.
Yeah, Twin Mole was forgiveness.
Trying to remember the other two off the top of my head.
I believe Georg was depression. And
yeah.
then Adola was empathy. There we go. But yeah, I want to know from you two, like, why does the moon actually look like this? Because when you look around the moon, we don't see any signs of grass or like a tree or anything. But it's just like, but in the moon, when the hero time goes inside, we see this and these kids. Like, what influence do you think these kids actually have, like, on the moon?
That's honestly a rather hard one. At least for me. Landi will probably come up with something better. But
Oh, stop it.
like, the only thing I can really come up with for that is like it's in regards to the kids themselves more so than the environment. So like my line of thinking, and I've thought this way for years, the reason these kids represent the Happy Mask Salesman himself, like beneath the masks, is because he was the one that went to the lengths he did to get his hands on Majora's Mask, causing all the chaos he caused. Mm-hmm. Like the giants being possessed, the moon wanted to crash into Termina, stuff like that. So I think the influence came from that, like him getting it, because like, he was basically the center source of that. Now, as for the masks, that one's a little bit of a no-brainer, I think, because Majora basically possessed the four giants, and the bosses are literal like possessions of the giants. Mm-hmm. So, it's kind of a small symbolism with that, but also the environmental part, like with the grass and the tree and everything. That part's a little bit complicated, but like, thing is, they're all still kids up there. Like you got the 5 kids, right? Yeah. The one with Majora's Mask, and then the 4 kids with the remains masks. Yes. What do kids view things as? They view things from a bit of an innocent eye. Yeah. Because they're very innocent minded and whatnot. So it could, like, the whole grassy area could be like a symbol of them seeing everything from like an innocent eye, or they view death as like a paradise type thing. Because if you think about it, if I kind of piggyback off of my theory about the moon being like Termina's god, it could very well represent Termina's version of heaven, and that's basically the afterlife where they're at. I don't know. Like, I can't really like put too much into it because I tried to come up with stuff for this one, and this one was very complicated. but that's kind of the best I got. Like it could very well represent Termina's version of the afterlife or heaven. So I don't know. Landi, what do you think? I'm curious on your thoughts.
So all of this, I really feel like this game is as much an internal journey for Link as an external one, in the sense that like Termina to me almost sometimes feels like Link being turned inside out. So let's start with that little grassy paradise looking place on the moon. To me, I think that represents something you were getting into a little bit, Sora, that there's an innocence to it. There's a sort of childhood innocence to it. Blue skies, green grass. There's like very like transparent, like almost like fairy dust floating in the air. It looks so paradise-like. Let's remember that the Link we know, this hero of time, was denied any kind of childhood. He didn't get to have one. And the time he did get to spend being a kid in the Kokiri Forest, he was an outcast because he didn't have a fairy. So none of the kids wanted to play with him other than Saria. So this is a Link that was denied a childhood because fate chose him to start... fate chose him to act when he was just a little boy. You know? He didn't even have time to fit in his home. So then he gets thrust 7 years into the future. So he's in a grown-up body, but he's still a kid in his mind. So he was a kid that was just forced to grow up so fast, chosen by fate to do, in a lot of ways, fate's bidding. The Triforce, Hyrule, whatever you want to call it. And so Majora's Mask is the beginning of Link actually taking some autonomy over his life. And what does he want to do? He wants to go find his friend, Navi. And stay with me, people. I promise it's all going to come back to the moon, I swear. He finally makes a decision for himself. I'm going to go find my friend. Because Navi is my friend. That she's the fairy friend I was denied my whole life that I finally got to have. And once I finally finish my mission, she's gone. So he's in pursuit of her. And in pursuit of her, he ends up in Termina.
Yep.
I'm going to get into this more later, but keep in mind that in Termina, he completely forgets that he was looking for Navi. Not that he forgets, he puts it to the side in favor of other people's problems, in favor of Termina's problems. Just like he put Hyrule before himself, before he knew it, he was putting another land and its people before himself again. With that said, let's get into the quotes. So you have the kid who says, your friends, what kind of people are they? Those people, I wonder if they think of you as a friend too. So to me, that kid is Skull Kid. And I think all four of these kids represent a different character from Majora's Mask. That one is Skull Kid. Very obviously, that is Skull Kid. That's his character arc, having trust issues with friends, problems with loneliness. That's what that quote is, full and through. So that kid on the moon, that's Skull Kid to me. And that's his inner child manifesting his feelings in the most direct way. Let's move on to the next kid who says, what makes you happy? What is it? What makes you happy? I wonder if it makes other people happy too. So you have this quote, which in a matter of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. In 20 words, it says happy 3 times. So there's this insistence on the word happy in this quote. This kid is the happy mask salesman with his ambiguous use of the word happy, trying to figure out what does happy mean, what makes other people happy, whatever makes you happy. Again, that insistence on happy. So we have a Skull Kid, a happy mask salesman kid, and then finally, we have this next quote, the right thing. What is it? If you do the right thing, I wonder if it will really make everyone happy. This, to me, is Link, who decides to do what is right as opposed to do what is right for him. And that's the decision he's constantly making. Is he's going to put Hyrule and Zelda and the castle and all of that before himself. He's going to, and the Deku Tree too. And he's going to put Termina and the Dekus, the Gorons, the Zoras, he's going to put all of them before himself. He's always doing what is right. But sometimes him doing what is right is at the cost of his own autonomy, his own agency, being himself. At no point in Termina was he ever conflicted about, hey, I'm going to put everybody here to the side so I can go find Navi. And when I find Navi, then I'll come back and help all of you. So to me, this quote is all about Link trying to make everybody else happy before himself. Always trying to do the right thing before trying to do what's right for him. And then we have this last quote from this fourth kid. Your true face. What kind of face is it? The face under the mask. I wonder if that's your true face. This kid represents the dilemma that the previous 3 characters I just mentioned shared. Skull Kid, Link, and the Happy Mask Salesman are all, metaphorically speaking, wearing a mask. The Happy Mask Salesman is being all eccentric and goofy and like happy and kooky, but really he's clearly a man with more knowledge than he lets on. He knows what Majora is. He knows about Majora's Mask. He knows how dire it is that he get a hold of that mask and have it in his possession. So he knows more than he lets on, but he just puts on this mask of being an aloof mask salesman who's kooky and quirky, but it's all a mask. There's a man underneath that crazy smile who's plotting to do something with Majora's Mask, and we'll get to that in a minute. Yep. Now, Skull Kid, with him having his trust issues and the loneliness, well, that's the mask that he's wearing, right?
Yes.
That's why he's acting like such a jerk throughout all of the game, pretty much. But that's not who he is. He really is a softie who wants to have friends. But what's he acting like? He's acting like a pompous jackass who thinks he knows better than anybody. He's putting on this mask to protect himself from getting hurt again. He's putting on this mask to protect himself from being vulnerable like he was with the 4 giants, and then they up and ditched him. And then he makes friends with these 2 fairies, and one of those ditch him. So it's like he's putting on that mask to protect himself from that particular insecurity. And then last but not least, there's Link, who he's putting on this mask of the hero of time. Because the hero of time is not who he is, it's a role he fulfills. And it's a role that he didn't get to pick. He didn't choose to be this. Fate chose him. So, in a sense, the hero of time, the Link we know, he's been wearing a mask the whole time. And what this game is getting at, especially this end game, is, so Link, who are you underneath that mask? That mask of the hero of time. Who are you? And Link himself is asking himself that question when he's in the quote-unquote lost woods looking for his lost friend. There's something very deep about that idea. And that he confronts this idea of, okay, so who am I? And who am I underneath this, not a facade, but this role I fulfill of being the hero of time? So, again, to circle it all back, the moon itself is just the confrontation of death. And what Link in particular is experiencing is the death of who he was. Maybe this is a literal death, but I think it's almost an ego death in the sense that he no longer gets to be the kid from Kokiri Forest, especially considering Sari is gone, and he no longer gets to be the hero of time because Hyrule's taken care of and Ganondorf's been sealed away. So who does he get to be? He doesn't have a home to go to. He's literally lost. So I'll leave it at that. That's how I kind of interpret that whole endgame moon sequence.
You know, I actually really do like that now that you actually think about it, and by putting the quotes together, like how they actually represent each of the different characters. Like, you know, like one of the kids actually symbolize the hero of time, the happy mouse elder, which probably shows like why they actually have, you know, his face, but like a younger age. And then of course, you know, mostly like the whole thing with the Skull Kid, like is what you guys were saying was mostly like throughout the entire game, like even in the story told by Andre's grandmother, like the Skull Kid, you know, he suffered through so much loneliness because he felt betrayed and scared and all alone, that there was nobody to be with. And like, that's why he interacted with, you know, with Tattle and Talon, who we actually met in Termina. And of course, you know, that's why, you know, he actually attacked the Happy Mask Salesman, because it's been told in Hyrule history, for kids who live in the Kokiri Forest who end up getting lost, they turn into Skull Kids. And even when the hero of time comes back to the Lost Woods to go find Saria in the Forest Temple, and he sees the Skull Kid, the Skull Kids don't recognize him, and they actually end up attacking him because they're scared. They're scared of adults, and like, you know, like it honestly has to be that fear of like being lost alone, you know, like in the woods, and that's definitely the reason. It's like a trait for like a Skull Kid to actually like attack humans, mostly adults, but have more of an interaction with kids. So that's why the Skull Kid is not afraid of Link, because you know he's just a child. But now if he was an adult, like when he was forced to grow up, then he would have straight up attacked him. Like, that's why, you know, he ends up attacking the Happy Mouse Salesman, because he was just scared of him. But, you know, mostly, as like Tattle says in one of the memories, you know, all he loved doing for fun was just pulling pranks on people. And that's all he did.
Yeah, I want to take it back to something with the mask salesman.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't forget, and this is what I was getting at before, and I'm like, he knows more than he lets on, clearly. Don't forget at the end of the game, he's holding Majora's mask in his hand, and he goes, "Oh, as I thought, the evil energy is gone from the mask."
Yes.
Which tells me this was all a setup. This whole encounter between Link and Skull Kid was in some way all a setup. The Happy Mask Salesman clearly knew who Link was and that he had these healing abilities. Hence why he taught him the Song of Healing. And like you were saying, Kokiri, maybe he used Link in this way because he knows Skull Kid is too scared of adults. So it's not like the Happy Mask Salesman can play the Song of Healing.
Yeah.
It had to be someone like Link, another child. That's the only one who could properly interact with Skull Kid without him being too scared to even consider. So just to get back to that, the Happy Mask Salesman clearly had a plan here. He was clearly trying something out. Oh, as I thought, the evil energy is gone from the mask. So what that tells you is, one, the Happy Mask Salesman, even though he has questionable means, he's a good guy and he wants evil purged from a mask. And when I think about what he is, I think he's a healer too. Is it him or Zelda that teaches the Song of Healing? I can't remember off the top.
It was Happy Mouse Salesman.
It is the Happy Mask Salesman. I think he's a healer, and I think what he effectively did was he took the masks off both Link and Skull Kid. He took the mask off of Link, like, hey, you don't have to be the hero. You saved Hyrule, you saved Termina, particularly Majora. You don't have to be the hero anymore. The mask is off. Matt, you can just go be a kid now. Go live your life. And that's him riding off into like the sunset with Epona. I know it's not a sunset, but metaphorically, he rides off with Epona, picking it up where he left off. And with the same deal, just like he took the mask off the hero with Skull Kid, he took the mask off the villain. Hey, you don't have to be this hurt prankster who's just scared and just is mischievous and is afraid to be alone. Like, you don't have to be the villain. He basically, Happy Mask Salesman effectively took the masks off of both Link and Skull Kid and said, you don't have to be the hero and you don't have to be the villain. You can both have what you want. Skull Kid, you could reclaim your lost friends. Link, you can go back and reclaim your lost friend. Look at Skull Kid. He reunited with his fairies. You can reunite with yours. Like, that's kind of how I see that ending in particular.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, one thing to remember, and I'm sure you guys know about this, but before the before the Happy Mask Salesman actually leaves, one of the quotes that he actually tells Link is say, he applauds Link for all the masks he collected, and he says, you sure have made a lot of people happy, but this is a good happiness.
Yes.
Yeah, and he says the same thing about the masks that he carries. He literally says the masks you have are filled with happiness.
Exactly. I feel
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I feel like that was the key component is the word happy.
Yes.
Yeah, that actually kind of played back to what you said about the one kid on the moon actually representing the Happy Mask Salesman. The moment you said that, I actually flash forwarded to that scene where he did say that about the masks representing all the happiness, and I'm just like, oh my lord, that makes sense. I never thought of this.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, they definitely each of the kids have a representation of somebody. But here's another thing though. Now that we tackled all the 4 kids who wear the remains of the bosses, what about the fine? We have one more child, and that is the kid wearing Majora's mask. And when you do think about it, I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but the way how he's plopped down, the way how he's sitting underneath that tree, he's sitting down. He has his arm crossed. Doesn't that look sort of familiar to the way how the Skull Kid was sitting when he was all alone before the fairies came around? I actually picked up on that. That is the same symbolism of how the Skull Kid felt. Because right after you give away, the hero time gives away all the masks to the children and they're gone, the child wearing Majora's mask says, and you can tell, just by reading it, he's just upset. He said, he says, everybody's gone. They all left.
I actually
Go
have a thought on that actually, like why that kid is the way he is with like Majora's Mask and whatnot.
Mhm.
I personally believe this kid with Majora's Mask represents Skull Kid's whole internal conflict. Because like if you think about it like this, you do the 4 mini dungeons, the kids are gone, right?
Yeah.
He believes the kids there abandoned him. Straight up abandoned him. The same exact way that he felt Tattle abandoned him, or like all of his other friends who he played pranks on abandoned him. This is basically his whole internal conflict, especially since once you do this, he's like, hey, let's play a game, good versus evil, that type of thing. So it's like his good self wants to fight his bad self. So
Mhm.
he gives you the Fierce Deity's mask, which is so it's a dark power, obviously, like with that mask, but I believe that represents the good side of his conflict, whereas the fight against Majora itself was also the bad part of the conflict.
Can I take that one step further?
Yes, go ahead, Landy.
Go for it. Go for it.
Let's maybe perceive in metaphorically Link and Skull Kid as that very conflict playing out. Like, let's maybe consider like, again, metaphorically speaking, that they're almost one and the same. Because Link and Skull Kid are both dealing with loneliness. They're both dealing with the same problem. They're just both, I guess you would say, handling it differently.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, I guess. But I like that. I like that. I always saw that final kid as Majora themselves. Because this is all Majora's game, right? Majora, a lot of Majora's dialogue is very much, to me, very like play. It's always about play. I think, in a sense, Skull Kid becomes possessed by Majora. And I feel like typically when, in stories, when you have like a demon possession or some kind of possession like that, it's because you've fallen into the same pattern that they fell into, and that's what allows them to possess you. So the backstory of Majora is very ambiguous. They don't give you a lot of it, but I'm willing to bet Majora's pain came from the same place as Skull Kid's. And what you actually got to see there was, even though you were seeing a kid with Majora's mask on, you got to see behind the mask. And the kids they're just looking for someone to play with. And again, this is why when, you beat the game, the Happy Mask Salesman picks it up, it goes, all the evil's been purged from this mask, which means like Majora in it of itself is not just some evil entity. It is something that has a choice, or at least has the capability to not be evil. Because at the end of the game, the mask has been healed of all its pain, the same way the Deku one was, the same way the Zora one was, the Goron one was. We can keep going. That's what that represents. So I think that final kid is Majora themselves, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He easily could be Majora, and I actually agree with that as well. But like one of my points with that is, while that is also Majora, I know it just, my thing is, it only represents the internal struggle. The key word here is loneliness. Majora feeds off of the loneliness of these characters. Like straight up feeds off of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and honestly, going back to what you guys were saying, like, it's definitely is like the stuff that that he actually tells Link before the final battle, where he says, when he actually gives Link the Fierce Deity mask, and the dialogue that it says when Link actually retrieves it is, could this mask power be more powerful than Majora? And then of course that's where he says, okay, let's play a game. We are going to play good guys versus bad guys. And he talks to Link and says, I'm not the bad guy, you are. You're the bad guy. And of course he says, shall we play? And like each of the transformation masks that Link has collected definitely represent and share like a different spirit of something or someone. Like obviously the power of the Deku Scrub mask definitely shares a representation of the loss of the Deku Butler's son. The Goron mask sharing the loss of the Goron hero Darmani, who lost his life after trying to climb Snowhead. The Zora mask representing the Zora guitarist Mikau of the Indiegogo band. And then finally, this actually was brought to an interview by Mr. Aonuma about the Fierce Deity mask, which of course he says, like, while there is not a lot to say, the only thing I can tell you is about in regards to the power of the Fierce Deity mask, it contains the memories of all the people in Termina.
Yep.
All right, so you know what that makes me think? Picture Termina as a living, breathing entity. The whole land, picture it as like a living, breathing entity. And that it is in so much pain that it's trying to die. And that's why the moon is crashing into the earth. Because let's also remember, the moon is supposed to crash on the day of the moon festival.
Yep.
So, like, and it's only when Link goes around this land and heals all that sorrow and pain that it finds the will to live, that it finds the will to fight back, that the giants return and they push that moon back into the sky. And then the Skull Kid learns that the giants still remember him.
Yep.
And that heals Skull Kid's pain, because he felt forgotten. And they told him, like, hey, we may not be around, but we didn't forget you. You know, we still remember you.
Exactly.
And that goes a long way, because he feels seen. He feels real, you know? So I guess when you, if you take that, if you see Termina as this living, breathing entity, like, yeah, it makes sense that on the day of the Moon Festival, Termina found the will to live again. And that's what the four giants returning and pushing the moon into the, you know, back into the sky kind of showcases.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, even after Link actually defeats Majora, like, we don't see about the originality of that moon that we actually talked about at the beginning of this podcast, to where we saw, like, people talking about, like, oh, this moon actually represents, like, a god, or, like, something that's more happy, or, like, what Shikashi, the astronomer, says, you know, like, this is a moon that I looked up as a child. Because, like, right after the ending of Majora's Mask, like, we don't get to see that original moon. The moon that had it influenced by Majora just disintegrates. Like, not even in the credits is this original moon that only a few people talked about is nowhere to be seen. Like, period.
Yep. And I personally believe it's because it's resting in peace at that point.
You know,
like, thinking about it like this, going back to one thing I said earlier, the moon was possessed by Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
And of course, like, piggyback off of what Landy said a little bit, Termina finds its whole will to live again. So, why does the moon need to be there at this point if it's not going to crash into Termina and destroy everything? If the pain is healed, then the source of that pain is gone. So it vanishes, turning itself into a rainbow, which represents peace.
Yes. And honestly, there's one thing I also want to add real quick, Sora.
Okay.
In regards to pain, though. Now, this is one of the things that Professor Shikashi actually says in the observatory. And I'm sure you guys have collected this item before. And that is the moon's tear. And so when Link actually looks up in the sky, Professor Shikashi says that the moon tears are like rare stones, and they are said to be worth of so much value throughout the land of Termina. It's so rare, and then of course he mentions that it's been happening recently. Mm-hmm. So was this actually a thing? You know, like, because, like, was the moon crying out tears? Is this a symbolism of, like, pain that's going on?
Yeah, it's the land of Termina's pain. You know, that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like the land itself is crying out in pain, and that's why there's almost like this nature phenomenon of the moon coming to crash into the earth that's happening, and that's at least how I see it. Because you're right, the moon is crying. There's teardrops are falling, which, you know, pain is in a lot of ways inevitable. You know, so like he was saying, yeah, the moon cries from time to time, but he mentioned that, like, it's been a lot, especially as of late. the moon is feeling it too. It's like, imagine there's an underlying like subplane of everybody's emotions that connects us all. And like the more pain there was in Termina, the more like intensely that pain was felt throughout the land. And so maybe it just bubbled up to a point the moon is crying, and acting out, trying to crash,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also gonna go ahead and add on to that a little bit. And I know one thing I'm gonna say is kind of bluntly obvious. I'm just throwing that out there. But let's look at the moon's tier itself as well. It's a literal moon rock that's worth a lot, right? It's a shining moon rock. But one thing to notice is this isn't just a moon rock that falls from the moon. It literally falls from the moon's eye, which is the obvious part. It falls directly from the eye of the moon. Hence, moon's tier. So, if you take that into account as well, and just add on to everything else, you can see the pain that it's feeling. You can literally just picture the pain the moon is feeling, the whole land of Termina is feeling. It's a literal representation at that point. So
yes, absolutely. And honestly, as what Landy was saying earlier, and what you were saying too earlier, Sora, all the inhabitants of Termina, not just in Clocktown, but a lot of people are and all the Terminians, they have been all suffering through pain, even during the final hours. Some people who don't accept death, and some people who do. Think about it. We all know about the the sad love story between Anju and Kafe. They said they would, they would announce their vows to get married on the day of the carnival, but they're willing to accept death even before they got married. On the third day in Romani Ranch, you can see the two girls who live alone, both Romani and Cremia, taking care of a ranch on their own, after their mother died. And even the older sister who says, I'll let you have, a sip of Chateau Romani, which of course, in Termina is considered to be alcohol, and also the guy who, the man who runs the swordsman school in West Clocktown, to where he says, oh, I'm going to go ahead and slash the moon. But at the end, he's all terrified and shaken. And even another important character is the postman, to where he says he has no choice whether he wishes to flee or not, because he says it's on his schedule. But by doing his quest, Kafei's mother just says, there's a moon coming down. I'm actually giving you the order to run and get out of here. Otherwise, you're screwed. So, and that's why he definitely chooses to flee. But there's a lot of people who choose to both evacuate, or just like Anju and Kafe, the farm girls Romani and Cremia, who know they're gonna have to accept death, which is just really sad.
it is.
But how do you feel about that, Landy? About all those people, what they're going through?
I mean, I think it's just, again, well, for one, I agree with everything you said, but I think it's just, a further example of what a troubled land Termina is, and if you see it as an inside-out link, it makes you wonder,
Yeah, exactly. But going through luck, Termina was just a land that's just filled with pain and sadness and depression, because by looking at a game like Majora's Mask, everybody just feels so alive. There's a lot of things going on. People are sad, people are dying, people are sick. There's just there's a lot of things going on in this mysterious land that definitely raises a lot of questions to people to this day. But it's definitely is a lot. It's definitely a lot. But because now after the end of Majora's Mask, this is the last that we actually get to hear from the Hero of Time. We don't know if he actually made it back. honestly, of course, we can confirm, and I know Twilight Princess confirms it, that the hero Shade is, of course, obviously the hero of time himself. So we don't know like what kind of lifestyle that he actually went through after the events of Majora's Mask. Like, I mean, because we all saw that he made it back into the Lost Woods. I'm sure something happened to him. Was he able to make it home safe? Like, honestly, to this day, we don't know. But the only thing that we see at the end as kind of a hint is what's etched on the log, the drawing that was done by Skull Kid, to where it shows both Link, the Skull Kid, and the 4 giants right behind them. That's kind of like a little key as to like peace and happiness. So maybe that could be something, the kind of fates that the hero of time had to accept. Where it's like being at peace once more. It's just like what you said, Landy. What the Happy Mask salesman says. Skull Kid, you don't have to worry about pain and suffering anymore. Link, you can go back into being a kid and reclaiming the childhood that you lost when you were forced to grow up.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel for Link. And I think part of what makes Majora's Mask so special is that it makes you feel for Link in a lot of ways that other games don't.
Yeah.
And that's because Link, for the most part, has to be a blank slate. He doesn't have any dialogue. There's a lot of things that almost dehumanize him sometimes. But Majora's Mask does an exceptional job of humanizing him and making you really feel for him.
Yeah.
Hero of Time is a real tragedy.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. Go ahead, Sora.
I was gonna say it's because you start to see him a little less as the hero of time and more as a kid who had his whole childhood ripped away from him, and it just kind of paints that picture.
Exactly. Now, here's one thing that I definitely do want to bring up as well, is that we were talking about this earlier, the entire land is probably like a dream or like a purgatory or perhaps a parallel universe. And, this was a moon that a lot of people looked up to. Could we actually say that this actually was a moon? Could we say that this moon was responsible for creating a land that was parallel to Hyrule? That's why, when Link actually goes around and, interacts with people, he sees a lot of people that he recognizes from Hyrule, you have the Gorman brothers who look like Ingo from Long Long Ranch. The farm girls, Romani and Cremia, representing an older and younger version of Malin from the ranch. You have Anju, of course, representing the Cuckoo Lady from Kakariko Village. And almost every person that Link's interacted with definitely share a similarity to someone who he remembers from his previous adventure in Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why I almost sometimes wonder if this really is some kind of inward journey of Link's.
Exactly.
If he's going through his unconscious, and if Skull Kid represents his unconscious self, his ugly self, the part of him that he's suppressing, the part of him that's scared and alone,
Exactly.
And that's I really think about it sometimes, and I think that's an example of good art, in my opinion. An example of it. I'm not saying all good art has to be this way, but when you have something like Majora's Mask where there's so many compatible interpretations that all maintain a consistent set of themes, that to me is so remarkable.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I actually did want to address as well is in every area that Link visited, Link always learns a new song. And to me, I feel that this song is definitely important, and this is the Elegy of Emptiness, to where the king of Ikana, or the deceased king, goes to Ikana, to where he states that the Elegy of Emptiness is supposed to reference an empty shell. And by playing that, if you were to play the song with each of the 3 transformation masks, you can see some dilated pupils, meaning that these 3 characters, of course, the Deku Butler's son, Darmani the Goron champion or hero, and Mikau the Zora guitarist from Great Bay, they've all died and moved on. But when you look at Link, like when he first learns the song, like his figure does not have any dilated pupils. It still gives him his blue eyes. So that meaning that Link is still alive for some reason.
Yep. It's like he's in the afterlife without being dead.
Exactly.
That's why, again, not to keep coming back to it, it's why I'm so drawn to this idea of it's his unconscious. He's exploring his unconscious self. That's why all the characters look similar to people he knows. That's why he and the villain Skull Kid are going through something similar.
Yes. Go ahead, Sora.
I was gonna say, like, the more you talk about that, though, like, the more sense it really does make. Because going back to another thing we said earlier, Link defeats Majora, the moon disappears, Termina finds its peace again, right?
Yes.
It's not just Termina and its residents that find that peace. Link himself also finally finds peace.
Yes.
And then he's finally ready to leave. So it's like, after all of that internal struggle, his sadness finally comes to an end. And everybody's happy again.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're not talking about this game, but going back to what I was saying about Twilight Princess with the hero shade, like one of the dialogues that he says, saying I have my regrets, I saying like, although I did live my life as a hero, I have my regrets, because he's definitely is referencing like a lot of people like definitely tend to like forget about him because Link actually Zelda in Ocarina of Time, she had to send Link back to reclaim the 7 years that he lost of being a kid because like Landi said, Link did not choose to be the hero of time. Link was not known as the hero of time. He was forced to do it. Like he was forced to grow up. That's why he was put to sleep for 7 years. That's why he wasn't able to pull out he wasn't able to use the Magic Sword as a kid because he was too young and he was not ready to acquire it until he was of age. But jumping forward to all this, it definitely just says like a lot, like how much mystery like Majora's Mask really has, and like how like even like with the tragedy of the hero of time, to where the hero shade states, like referencing like like a lot of people didn't recognize him for his heroic efforts, and like he may have gone back in time to reclaim the 7 years, but do these people actually remember him for what he did? Nobody knows that he left Hyrule to go to Termina. Nobody knows that he actually had to go stop a moon from crashing down into a different land. Nobody knows exactly what is done. Nobody knows that it was him who actually sealed Ganondorf away in the evil realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually something I was about to say. Like, no one even remembers the heroic deeds he did to even save Hyrule because he went back in time and all of that was prevented. So
exactly, yeah. What do you think about that, Landi?
I think it connects him to Skull Kid and that fear of being forgotten.
Honestly, it definitely is true, because that was because like one of the things that's what the hero shade in Twilight Princess, aka the hero of time, says. I have regrets, and you can tell, like, he definitely felt, alone. Like, there's definitely a lot of alone, even though he definitely passes on his teachings to another hero, thus being the hero of Twilight.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that definitely was a lot that I think we definitely have covered a lot of almost everything in regards to the moon, haven't we?
I would think so. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything I want to talk about, but I think I got it all.
Yeah, I think we actually did get it all. I think we got everything from here. But honestly, I think we can all agree that, in conclusion, that this is definitely one of the darkest games, right next to Twilight Princess, that it's very dark. It has a really dark tone and atmosphere, and, like, definitely raises a lot of mysteries and questions to this day.
Yeah. Definitely agree there.
Exactly. Do you guys have any add-ons or anything?
No, nothing I can think of.
No.
Okay. Well, I think we definitely have covered everything, but I definitely would like to say thank you guys, thank you both for being here. This has been really fun. I'm glad we got to talk about a game from our childhood and like being able to express about how we felt about the moon and like what mysteries it has involved. Like, you know, honestly, you know, Majora's Mask is such a good game.
Oh yeah, it is.
It is just really, really good. But honestly, you know, like I said, I want to thank you both for actually being here. Thank you guys for coming on with me and like talking to me about the mysteries of the origin of Majora's Mask's moon.
Well, hey, thank you for having us.
Yes,
I would
absolutely.
agree, man. Thank you so much, dude. I really had a blast.
Yes, abso-freaking-lutely. Which, by the way, y'all, if you guys have not checked out any of my friends, please definitely go follow them on their Twitch channels. Please go follow Sora for a bunch of variety content. Also, be sure to go ahead and drop Landi over at the Landi Lounge. If you guys want to hear some awesome theories about Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, this is your guy right here. Like he is definitely like the master of masters when it comes to theories and lore on Kingdom Hearts, but also for Final Fantasy. So if y'all got any theory questions about Kingdom Hearts, I honestly recommend this man right here.
Thank you, dude.
I definitely recommend him. But yes, guys, please definitely go follow all my friends. So next month on May 3rd, this will be the next topic that I will be talking about for episode 4 of the Kokiri Chronicles. So my next topic is going to be we are definitely going to discuss Hyrule's Great Flood from Wind Waker. That will be my next topic that I will be discussing about. So if you guys love all things Wind Waker, which by the way, Sora and Landi, y'all might want to call Sid for this one.
Yeah, you sounds about right. Sid would be on board for this one.
Yeah, let her know.
Yeah, you might want to call Sid. But yes, guys, so if you guys love Wind Waker, we are going to be talking about Hyrule's Greatest Flood. Like, why does flood happen? How did it even start? So that is going to be episode 2 of the Kokiri Chronicles podcast. But like I said, thank you guys. Thank you both, Landi and Sora, for being here. It was a pleasure to have you both on the show tonight. You guys are just incredible.
We appreciate
thanks
you
for
as
having
well.
us, man.
Yes, thank y'all for being here. And let me go ahead and deafen y'all real quick. But yeah, guys, that is definitely going to be it. That is episode 3 of the Kokiri Chronicles. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to do the following by liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good jazz. And also, come say hi to me over on Twitch under the same name of Born Kokiri. But yes, starting next month on May 3rd, we're going to be talking about episode 4. We'll be talking about the Great Flood from Wind Waker. Why the land of Hyrule was flooded. So we will be diving into the adult timeline. But anyway, y'all, I like to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day or whatever time you're watching this, and enjoy your rest of your day, everyone. Good night. You guys are incredible. Love each and every one of you. You guys are amazing.